Hey guys, it's Morgan with Nurse Hub. Today we're going to go over everything that you're going to need to know in the science section of the TEAS 7 exam so that you know exactly what you need to study. So if you have to take the TEAS exam and you don't know where to study or how to begin, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to cover how many questions there are in the science section, how much time you're given, what science topics you're going to be tested on, and what those questions might look like. And lastly, I'm going to be giving you a very clear next step on how to begin your studying journey so that you can successfully pass the TEAS 7 exam. Before we get started, go ahead and check out the links in the description just below me here. Nurse Hub has some amazing resources for you to access to begin your studying journey for free. The first is the free TEAS 7 practice exam. You can take that online. It's going to look just like the real test. All of those tests that are in the free section include a detailed score report, and they give you a really great idea of how you would score today if you took the exam. We also have a free TEAS 7 practice PDF, so you can download that, print it out, and take it on your own schedule at your own pace. The practice test PDF also has the answer explanations, so you can go through in a very detailed way and understand why the correct answers are correct and why the wrong answers are wrong. You're also going to want to join our free TEAS 7 Facebook study group. The Facebook group is filled with tens of thousands of other prospective nurses or folks who have entered nursing school already. They have studied for or are actively studying for the same test that you are and can provide other resources, support, and feedback. I've also recorded another video for you where I go through every single one of the questions on the free TEAS 7 science section exam that we have at nursehub.com. And I kind of work through each one of those questions with you. So definitely make sure that you check out those free resources as your starting point for your study journey for the TEAS 7 exam. As always, if you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of Nurse Hub's free TEAS content. We continue to release new content on this channel, including test walkthroughs, TEAS questions of the day videos, and more. So remember to like and subscribe so that you can get all of that good stuff. All right, now let's jump in and give you exactly what you need to know to be successful on your study journey. First, let's talk about timing and number of questions. The TEAS section consists of 50 questions. You're given only 60 minutes to complete the science section. So this means you have a little over a minute to answer each question. That's not a lot of time. This means you're going to need to move pretty quickly through the majority of the questions and, of course, take your time where you have to. The key to answering these questions and getting them right every time is to be very familiar with the material. It's going to require a lot of practice. But don't just practice anywhere. There are tons of practice exams available on the internet, and a lot of them are not aligned and don't really have questions that go into the correct depth that's required for the TEAS exam. We have seen a lot of websites that simply recycle old questions or pull problems from other tests like the ACT or the SAT, and those are not aligned to the actual TEAS exam. Studying with these resources will not only be a waste of time, but it also will not guarantee a passing score on your test. So of course, you do need to practice, but you have to practice in an accurate way that is aligned to the test that you're planning to take. One place to find accurate questions that are aligned to the TEAS exam is on ATI's website. ATI is the creator of the TEAS exam, so their practice questions are going to be very accurate and perfectly aligned to their exam. Now, there are some downsides to using ATI's prep course. One is that they only give you 2 tests. That's 100 total science questions. And then you can only take each practice test twice, right? You get 2 attempts. Additionally, it's pretty expensive. When it comes to the science section of the TEAS exam, it covers a very wide range of subjects, from highly specific questions about anatomy and physiology, chemistry and biology, and even scientific reasoning. Studying with only 100 science questions is a great start, but honestly, it's not going to give you the variety and the amount of practice that you're going to need to be successful on the exam. Our TEAS 7 science course at Nurse Hub has questions that are just as accurate and realistic as ATI's. You're going to have the reassurance of knowing that you'll be preparing with the right material. However, with Nurse Hub, you're going to have access to over 700 practice questions. That's 778 total science questions, covering every topic tested on the TEAS. You can take each test as many times as you want, so you can practice until you feel confident. And it's only $20 a month. You get access to absolutely everything on our website, not just the science content. So, to recap, you need to practice as much as possible, but remember to choose your practice carefully, as there's a lot of junk out there, and you don't want to waste your time taking tests that are not aligned to the actual exam that you're going to sit for. There's nothing worse than being surprised on exam day that all the questions that you studied with did not actually prepare you for the test you're sitting for. So make sure you study with Nurse Hub. There are going to be no surprises. You have unlimited practice. You can take those exams over and over and over again to ensure that you have the depth of familiarity and knowledge that you're going to need to be successful on that T7 exam.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I am the Chief Learning Officer here at Nurse Hub. I'm going to be walking you through everything you need to know, including examples of questions that you might see in the anatomy portion of the TEAS science test. If I can tell you one thing about this section of the test, it's that you have to have a solid understanding of all the body systems, how they work, and how to deeply analyze different scenarios that rely on your knowledge of these topics. You'll need to know all about the different body systems, as well as some general anatomy and physiology knowledge. Let's go over this together. The first topic is the organization of the human body. You're going to need to know the levels of organization, and that's going to be really important. The 8 levels of organization, from most basic to most complex, are atom, molecule, organelle, cell, tissue, organ system, and finally, the organism. You'll also need to know the locations of the different body cavities, what anatomical position is, how the body is divided into different planes, and types of human tissues. The cardiovascular system is the first major body system you're going to need to be super familiar with. Trust me when I say you'll need to know the flow of blood through the heart really, really well. One good tip is to try and draw and label your own diagram of the heart. Label every single structure of the heart, and then indicate the flow of blood from start to finish through those structures. You might see a question like, which blood vessel delivers blood directly into the right atrium? So you're going to need to know both how blood flows through and the names of the structures of the heart. Some other important things to know are the functions of blood and its components, what a blood pressure reading is actually telling you, the process of initiating a heartbeat, the anatomy of the heart, and cardiovascular conditions and diseases. For the respiratory system, you're going to need to know all about the structure and function of this system and its parts. A key area to focus on is the process of breathing. You should know the flow of air in and out of your body, as well as the process of gas exchange that takes place in the lungs when you do breathe in and out. You should also be sure to familiarize yourself with common respiratory conditions and diseases. Noting connections between the components of the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system is going to help solidify your overall understanding of the body systems and how these two work together. The next body system is the digestive system. It's important to know each of the structures of the digestive system as well as their functions. You'll be tested on whether or not you can identify in which organ a specific process takes place. Think, what happens in the stomach? What happens in the different parts of your small intestine, your large intestine? Create a visual representation for yourself, labeling the parts of this system and noting which parts of the digestive process happen where. You'll also need to be familiar with disorders of the digestive system, including IBS and Crohn's disease. Onto the reproductive systems. These questions will cover the anatomy of female and male reproductive systems, the process of reproduction itself, and then moving into puberty and development. Understanding the specific structures of this system will help you master these questions. You'll also want to become familiar with the hormones associated with our reproductive organs as well, and know how they drive the development of sex cells, fertilization, and the maturation of an embryo. For the urinary system, you're going to want to be able to understand how it functions, but also how it functions with other body systems. For example, the urinary system works together with the cardiovascular system and the endocrine system. These systems cooperate in the process of waste elimination, hormone secretion, and regulating the balance of blood, water, and salts in your body. Super important. One thing that will definitely ensure your success for questions about this system is to know the kidneys like the back of your hand. Study these structures, their function, and the entire process of filtration from start to finish. Next up is the skeletal system. You'll need to know how bones form, how bones change as a person develops and ages, how the skeletal system is organized, and the functions of the skeletal system in general. The two main parts of this system are the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. You'll want to make sure you know all the differences between the types of bones, which include long bones, flat bones, irregular bones, and short bones. An example of a question you may see is, which of these bones is a flat bone? So you'll want to make sure you're familiar with these types of bones and their characteristics so that you can identify them and pick them out of a group. For the muscular system, you'll need to know the 3 different types of muscle tissues, the functions of the muscular system, the anatomy of skeletal muscle tissue, and how muscle contraction works. You'll want to be very familiar with the roles that filaments like actin and myosin play in the process of muscle contraction. It's also important to note the points of cooperation between the muscular system and the skeletal system. Another system you need to study is the integumentary system. This consists of your skin, hair, and nails. Make sure you know the different types of glands that are part of this system and their specific functions. For example, sebaceous glands and sweat glands. What's key to success in this section? Understanding the layers of your skin and what processes take place in each layer. Do you know all the functions of the epidermis? What about the subcutaneous layer? Make sure to take good notes on those. Now let's talk about the nervous system. You should study the anatomy of the nervous system and its main functions. Make sure you really understand the 2 main parts of the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Also know how they operate within the body. You'll also want to ensure that you are super familiar with the anatomy of a neuron and how they work within the central nervous system to transmit signals throughout your body. Another important piece of the nervous system is the autonomic nervous system, which is involuntary actions in your body, and the somatic nervous system, which are those voluntary actions. And finally, you'll want to study the anatomy of the brain itself, including the location and function of its various lobes. For the endocrine system, there's a lot of parts. First, make sure to study the major glands of the endocrine system, including where they're located and which hormones they produce. You'll also want to study the role of the hypothalamus in the endocrine system. Make sure to also become familiar with the different major hormones. This includes what they do and what they're secreted in response to. A chart would be really helpful here. It will also be helpful to fully understand the concepts and processes behind homeostasis, positive feedback, and negative feedback. And finally, the immune system. The key to success within this body system is to really map out all the parts of the system and quiz yourself on the differences. You'll want to know the difference between innate and adaptive defense. You'll also want to understand the layers of defense of the innate immune system and how they work together to provide several layers of defense against pathogens for our body. It's also really important to know the difference between passive and active immunity. You'll also want to know about all the different types of specialized cells that function as part of your immune system. Be sure to also study the diseases and disorders of the immune system, such as type 1 diabetes and Graves' disease. So that concludes the anatomy portion of the test and what you'll need to know to be successful. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to review what's going to be in the chemistry, biology, and scientific reasoning portion of the TEAS science test.
One of the lesser known subjects that will be tested in the science section of the TEAS exam is scientific reasoning and experimental design. You'll need to know how to design an experiment, the steps of the scientific method, the different types of reasoning, positive, negative, and indirect correlation, and scientific tools and measurement. There are also 2 types of reasonings that you will need to understand, which are inductive and deductive reasoning. The steps of the scientific method are to make an observation or ask a question, conduct your background research, formulate a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, and then analyze the results. Finally, you report out on the conclusion. You will also need to know units of measurement and what types of units should be used for certain sizes or types of objects. All of these topics are absolutely critical to passing the TEAS exam and, of course, to being successful in the science section specifically. The next topic is the foundations of biology. Some of the important things to know are the taxonomy system, water molecules and biomolecules, and the metabolic process. You're going to need to understand cell structure, functions of the parts of a cell, and the different types of organelles that are found within a cell. You'll need to understand eukaryotes and prokaryotes, animal and plant cells, autotrophs and heterotrophs. You'll want to be able to label all of the different organelles on a diagram and explain their functions and purpose within a cell. The next topic in the bio section is cellular reproduction, right? So that's going to cover mitosis and meiosis. You're going to need to understand all of the detailed phases within both mitosis and meiosis, be able to compare and contrast what occurs physically within the cell. The next topic is going to be genetics and inheritance. So you're going to need to understand not only like how cells are reproduced, but then also like the genetic inheritance component of that as well. You'll need to understand the difference between DNA and RNA, what nucleotides are, how nucleotides pair, how DNA replicates versus RNA. And then you'll also need to be familiar with dominant and recessive genes, kind of genetics and inheritance in terms of heterozygous or homozygous pairs, and be able to complete a Punnett square and make predictions about offspring.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm the course leader for the chemistry section of the NurseHub TEAS science course. I am now going to cover what chemistry topics you will see in the science section. Many people find chem to be a difficult subject, but don't worry, we got you covered. Let's start by going over the different topics you will see. You will need to know scientific notation, atoms, periodic table of elements, acids and bases, properties of matter, chemical reactions, and solutions. A question that we get a lot is, do I need to memorize the entire periodic table of elements? Let me put your mind at ease. You do not need to memorize the entire periodic table, but you do need to know the different parts of the periodic table, like atomic number, mass, and groups. You will get questions about this. Temperature in the metric system will be on the test, so you need to be able to make these conversions. The next topic is states of matter, which covers the differences between solids, liquids, gases, and plasma. You will need to know these 4 states of matter, phase changes, and if energy is absorbed or released during each phase, as well as heating and cooling curves. Another topic you need to know is the properties of matter. Matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. You will need to understand physical versus chemical properties, intensive versus extensive properties, phase changes, molecular traits such as cohesion and adhesion, diffusion, and osmosis. The 6 phase changes you need to know are condensation, evaporation, freezing, melting, sublimation, and deposition. For chemical bonds, you will need to understand the 3 ways that atoms can become stable. This also involves knowing what is bonding: ionic and covalent bonds, ion formation, ionic bonding, covalent bonding, and Lewis structures. You will also need to know about chemical solutions. For this, you will need to study different types of mixtures. There's homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures. Chemical reactions, there's 5 types. You'll need to know about synthesis, decomposition, single replacement, double replacement, and combustion reactions, and energy diagrams. The last topic, you will see questions about our acids and bases. You'll need to study properties of acids and bases, classification of acids and bases, reactions, pH scales, and the Bronson-Lowry theory. And that's what you got to know for the chemistry portion of the TEAS science test.
All right, welcome back. So that's a pretty thorough explanation of what you should expect on the exam. I'm sure you might be feeling a little overwhelmed because this is a lot of information, like we talked about at the top of the video. The science section is nothing to scoff at. We have both anatomy and physiology, ranging all the way to chemistry and bio, and of course scientific design. And all of these things need to be kind of rote memory by the time you arrive at the exam. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed about where to begin, please know that that's absolutely normal and natural for you to feel that way. And we have some excellent resources, as I previously outlined, for you to begin this journey. The first thing I would recommend is that you take one of our free practice tests. This is going to give you a really good idea about what you know already, and that'll put your mind at ease. It's going to give you a clear idea of where your areas for misunderstanding still exist. And you'll want to focus on those areas first. Begin your work in studying on those areas where you have knowledge deficits. Again, there are links to our free practice tests in the description below this video. You can also just stay on for the next video where I'm going to walk you through the full practice test, explaining all of the answers along the way. So stick with me if you want to walk through the full TEAS exam. We're about to do that up next. Another recommendation I have is to study for the TEAS exam on the Nurse Hub website. We've teamed up with Brandon and Dr. Bruce to create incredible TEAS resources. The course is going to teach you everything you need to know for the science section. We cover everything from the basics to the most advanced topics on the exam. Our course includes video review, timed practice tests that simulate the real exam, in-depth answer explanations, lesson pages, and quizzes along the way to make sure you understand each bite-sized piece. If you take our course and you complete every quiz, I guarantee that you're going to pass the TEAS exam on your first try. Our course is open to all Nurse Hub members. To sign up for Nurse Hub, follow this link or check it out in the description below. We've helped over 25,000 people prepare for their TEAS exam, and we want to help you next. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this video. Now, go take your first practice exam and follow along with me on the practice test walkthrough while I will explain all the answers and questions in depth. Let's get you ready to take this TEAS exam.